Hello and welcome. I'm Elaine Canyon, sweetly writing happily ever after, one book at a time. And in this video, we're building your cover design toolbox. All right, the last 3 videos, I've introduced you to color, we've talked about color harmonies, and we've discussed color psychology. Now we're going to put all of that together to help you know what colors to choose for your cover design specifically. We're going to do this in 5 steps. The first step is you need to identify the overall feeling of your book. When your target reader finishes reading your book and sets it down, what feeling will they have when they walk away? This is important because this gives you the basis of what colors you want to use. If you're writing a romance, you want your readers to walk away feeling hopeful and fulfilled. If you're writing a thriller, you probably want them to walk away feeling satisfied, but also a little scared. The feelings and emotions that you want your book to evoke, those need to be written down and very clear in your mind because they're going to affect the colors you'll ultimately choose. Once you have that information written down, step 2 is to identify your genre and then your subgenre and then your niche genre. We're going to drill down as far as we can. We're doing this for a reason. It's really easy to say, I wrote a romance book. Okay, well, the covers that you see in Western romances are different than the colors that you're going to see in contemporary romance, and different than the colors that you'll see in fantasy romance, and different than the covers that you see in every other subgenre of romance. If you drill down even further, let's say I wrote a fantasy romance novel. That's what I write. Well, that's great. But dark fantasy romance is different than sweet fantasy romance, is different than the next niche of fantasy romance. You're identifying your market here. And by doing that, we need to be specific. You need to know exactly what you write and where you fit. If you don't know those things, using your cover design as an effective marketing tool can be very difficult. So if you can narrow yourself down and find your niche, that is going to help immensely in the next step. In step 3, we're going to study. And when I say study, I don't mean that you're just going to go browse covers in the bookstore. Oh no, my friend. You could definitely go to the bookstore, but I would suggest doing this online because you're going to be doing it for a while. You are going to be digging into the covers in your niche genre. And we're not just going to look at how pretty they are. We're going to identify the elements of what's going on, specifically the color. Find the covers that are selling. If you write swords and sorcery, then a great thing to do is to go to Amazon and click on swords and sorcery and start looking at those covers, especially the ones that are selling well. You want to identify the colors that these covers are using. You want to identify the colors you don't see. If you don't see colors, take note of that. There's probably a reason. You want to take note of how many colors are being used. If you only see color schemes of 2 or 3 colors and then a neutral, you're going to want to take note of that. That's important information for you as you design your own book cover. Take color psychology into account as well. What are the emotions that you're feeling as you look at these covers? And then write down the colors that you do see because that's going to tell you the emotions that they wanted to portray as well. Also identify the color harmonies while you're writing those colors down. Are you seeing a lot of complementary colors? Are you seeing tetradic color harmonies? Make sure that you understand the relationships of these colors in every cover that you're looking at, especially the covers that appeal to you. That's a big thing too. When you're looking at a cover, sure, it might be selling, but is it one that you like? Because if you don't like your cover, it's going to be harder for you to sell your book. We're trying to find a balance between a good cover that sells, but also a cover that you are proud of. We don't want to create a cover that's just market specific but isn't connected to you in any way. Because if you don't feel a connection to it, you personally aren't going to want to sell that book as much, because you'll look at it and you're not going to feel attached to it the way you would if it was a good cover that is to market, but also a cover that you love and you can be proud to show it to people and excited for them to take the book home. Step 4 is putting all of this together. In the research you did in step 3, how many colors on average were used? That is your maximum amount of colors. It doesn't mean that you can't use fewer, but it does mean that you probably don't want to go higher than that. What harmonies were used the most? Did you see a lot of tetratic? Did you see a lot of complementary? How much of it was breaking the color harmony rules? Is that a common theme in your genre, to take color harmonies and change them in a certain way? What ways are they being changed? You don't need to copy exact harmonies, but it's important to know what's being used. If you come in and you're not using the right colors, or if you're using color harmonies that feel overpowering compared to what is currently trending in your genre, that, if not done well, can make your book stand out in the wrong way. This is an opportunity, however, for you to shine. Looking at the color harmonies that are there, what can you do to change them a little bit so that your book stands out? Once you have all that information, then we're going to go back to step 1. And this is where we actually choose the colors, because you're going to identify those feelings that you wanted to evoke. You're going to look at the colors that are popular in your genre, and then you're going to go to color psychology, and you're going to go through those colors, and you're going to find the colors with the color harmonies that send the message that you want through your book cover. Okay, the last step, step 5. There's a term that we use in graphic design. We call it the designer's eye. What that means is that good design can break rules, and sometimes bad design follows all the rules. You have to learn to see good design. And this is the hardest part, and it's part of why we do step 3, and why I said you're really going to study and you're really going to dig in and identify what's going on in the covers in your niche genre. The reason for that is, yes, it's good research and it helps you create a marketable product, but also because it's going to start teaching you and training your designer's eye. You have to start seeing when something does work and something doesn't work, even if you can look at it and say, well, wait, that follows all the rules. Design is still art, and it still needs to be pleasing to the eye, especially your eye. So don't be afraid to break rules, especially if you're looking at your design and it's following rules and it just looks wrong or off, or something seems odd. You know the message you want your book to convey. And you know that when someone looks at your cover, you want them to feel certain emotions. So take the time to look at those color palettes that you're creating. And if anything feels like it doesn't fit, don't be afraid to change it. Now, I can already hear the question, but Elaine, what about photo manipulation covers? Did those still follow the same color rules? They do. Even photo covers have a color palette, just like an illustrated cover has colors that the designer has specifically chosen. A photo cover does too, and we manipulate the photos in order to have those colors that we've chosen. So let's take a look at 2 covers and talk about the colors that we see there and what their relations are. We're going to start with a photo cover, since that's something that's going to be harder to identify the colors at first, especially on your own. So the first book cover we're going to look at is Brittany Fitcher's My Little Rock Airman. And this cover was designed by Melody Simmons. It's a beautiful cover and I really like it. I also really love this book. If you want a sweet military romance featuring Air Force as opposed to the Army or the Navy or the Marines, this is a book for you. She also has 2 others in this trilogy. They're darling. I love them. I've read them, I can't count how many times now. This cover is a photo manipulation cover. What that means is we've taken pictures and we've layered them on top of each other, and we're only choosing the portions of the picture that we want to create a cohesive image. Something you'll see is that it looks at first like there's a lot of color here. What's actually going on is there are 4 colors. So you have blue, you have yellow, you have green, and you have different tints of a red purple that push all the way into pink. This is a variation of a tetratic color harmony. So here on the color wheel, I can show you. Melody uses a yellow green, and she sticks more in the shades of it, so she's added a lot of black to it. So our eye kind of looks at it and thinks that it is a very dark green. Then she's come over and she's using blue violet. It's more of a shade of blue violet, and she's actually put a little bit more blue in than her violet. So we're not directly on this color right here of blue violet. We're more blue than we are violet, but it's still there. And then she comes up and she uses red violet for that sky, and she uses lots of tints of it. So that red violet is the main color in those clouds, and then she's added a lot of white so that we're getting into almost a pink. And then we're using that yellow orange. And again, she's using more yellow than it is yellow-orange, like she did with the green. And that's creating her tetratic color harmony. She's also chosen dominant colors. Yellow and blue are her dominant colors. We see that in the blue of his shirt and the yellow of her shirt. And then we also see it because she's used a very similar blue to his shirt to write the words, "My Little Rock Airman," up at the top. We can also talk about the psychology of what's going on in this picture. He's dressed in blue, and he gives us that feeling of stability. He's going to give us a strength in this story. Then we have the heroine, and she is dressed in yellow. She is going to be giving us a lot of optimism and happiness in this story. And that's true. I've read this book multiple times. The hero is a very strong man, and he stands up for what he believes in. And the heroine is super happy. Her character gives you a feeling of optimism even as she handles her own struggles. The green gives us balance because the two characters do balance each other. And that red violet conveys the romance of the story. All of that is done just in Melody Simmons' color choices. It's beautiful. It represents the book really well, and I adore it. Now, let's take a look at a book cover that I promised we'd come back to at the very beginning of this cover design series. When I talked about the 11 principles of design, I used this cover. This is S.L. Prater's Court of Tricksters, and it was designed by St. Jupiter. It is my favorite book cover, period. It's amazing and it's beautiful. And one of the reasons it works so well is St. Jupiter's choice in colors. She's used 2 colors, blue, and then she's used gold, which technically falls in here in between our yellow-orange on a color wheel. And so it's not quite taking a split complementary and throwing out the third color, or taking a triad and throwing out the third color. But it's close. It's the same feel of taking a color harmony and then breaking it to add better contrast or better emphasis of what you want to show. That monochromatic scale adds so much depth, and the blue and the gold add a lot of contrast without being overbearing. The gold is also softer on the eye than a straight yellow is, which helps us to stay involved in the cover. The blue that she uses portrays that authority, but it also gives us that feeling of distance and coldness, which works really well because I understand that this is an enemies to lovers book. And I haven't read it yet. It's still on my TBR. I'm close. I'll get there, I promise. Won't we all? We'll get to them. But we have that authoritative feel, and we have the distance that needs to be there, as well as the gold giving us that feeling of opulence and royalty and wealth, and a sense of success and optimism for the future. Now, I want to point out for both of these covers that there are neutrals in here. For Melody Simmons' cover design, the neutral is in the people. Their skin color and their hair color act as her neutrals. They're the browns. And because they're the people themselves, she can get away with using that bright yellow shirt without it feeling overpowering. In St. Jupiter's cover design, our neutral is actually white, and it's used in highlights to help soften the rest of the image and give us a sense of space while still having so much going on in the cover. This has been a lot Over the course of these 4 videos, I have introduced you to color in cover design and how to ultimately apply all of this information to your own cover. Choosing the right colors isn't something that you're going to be good at immediately. It takes some time and some effort. I've talked about how my videos also apply to publishing on a teeny tiny budget. If the amount of money you have to put into your writing business is small, but the amount of time you have is large, then you can take the time to really dive in to cover design and learning how to do it yourself. Picking colors is a skill. And as you research cover design and start looking at it with a designer's eye, as opposed to looking at a cover as a reader, it's going to change the way you think about your own book and the way you think about the cover that you're going to put on it. I would love to know your favorite use of color in a book cover in the comments down below. I hope these videos have been helpful. We're not done with cover design. There's still so much that we can cover. But this is where we're going to stop talking about color specifically on its own and moving on to things like typography. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps other authors find it so that they too can design their own book covers or be able to talk to their book cover designers so that they can create better book covers that sell their books. If you want to keep learning more about book cover design, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post videos on Wednesdays about cover design, discovery writing, and self-publishing on a teeny tiny budget. I hope to see you back again soon.